Thanks. First of all, I would like to thank the, the faculty, the visiting faculty, students, and I see a lot of really young students who are my senior colleagues, who are all here. Thank you for coming, and for all the practicing architects who are here. Um, yeah, it's wonderful to see the spirit in Pune, and that is really special. The spirit of learning doesn't end, and it has nothing to do with age. Thank you especially, Girish, for always being encouraging and for the invite, and it's a pleasure. I was thinking about Kuke's presentation, and there was a couple of things which was absolutely wonderful to think about. My speed will be 1.25 to 1.5. Like on YouTube, which you can change to save time. We are a little behind time, so please bear with me. You can slow it down on the recording. The first project which Kuke showed, and that infrastructure can be actually so beautiful, which was in Ujjain. That infrastructure need not be seen as it is not only a beautiful place, it is a beautiful structural work, and it is so generous to people, and I think the biggest thing with masterworks is that there is so much ease in when you see it and experience it. There is literally seems as if there has been no effort, and neither do you feel the pressure of that somebody is trying to do something. It is just easy, and this is where I've been reflecting on this word called ordinariness for a long time, for a few years, and I'm coming to believe that ordinariness is a great virtue of life and design. We'll see some of it. So I will start with, I make it quick. Nisha and I, this is the journey of two of us. The red being me, which lived from Bengal, never lived there, lived in UP close to Delhi, moved from there to Lucknow to Ahmedabad to Bangalore. Nisha, ethnically from Kerala, never lived there, born and brought up in Bangalore, goes to Ahmedabad and comes back. And then we are exposed to a different line of architectural exposure, which is in Doshi's school at SEPT, and Doshi himself having had the experience with Corbusier, and which has the 1920s work of Corbusier has a lot of thinking when he's writing, especially when he's talking about towards a new architecture and things like that. He's actually I mean, it is a kind of a condition which is also hugely impacted by the World War and the methods of production and how things should be made, and concrete becomes such an important part of that time. So that I'll put aside. So today I'm not going to talk about form, I'm not going to talk about light, I'm not going to talk about any of the physical aspects that we understand architecture from, because in my opinion, architecture and its soul rests outside these things. And these are means that we need to be aware of, just as we are aware of our bodies. That they are just tools, they exist, and we have to it has just to be forgotten. We are never aware that we are breathing, but we breathe. When we run, we pant. So I think that is what, so the focus and is completely outside this formal or a deliberate way of approaching architecture. The first house that we did was for my mother-in-law, which was on a 30 feet by 80 feet plot. So the garden is at the back. Um, it was built in 1996. Fairly simple plan. You will see it has precast beam systems, precast panels, all that. Um, and it is something which has grown on us, and I think it has also become a kind of a anchor point when I look back at work that I do feel that I lost my way in between. There are projects where I think I had to turn back, and I realized that because there is something in some projects which, and it is not just nostalgia. It is something deeper is there, and that's the garden today where we normally dine. It's a little garden at the back. And that's all it is and makes a home. This is 2017. It's called the House of Stories. Belongs to a writer who, after 1 hour of meeting, she says that I'm an architect from SPA Delhi and I want you to design my house. She could have said that when she entered the door. I was wondering, because the first thing she said, I want a house of darkness. So I said, I have lived in North India, so I in my mind I said, Vichitra Prani, you know. I said, what a strange thing. And the first thing she handed over was Tadawando's book, I Love Concrete. This, of course, Nisha has designed. Yeah, I didn't clear this exam. We both made 2 independent schemes on the same idea of House of Darkness, and I think this was much closer. And I'm glad that I lost on that, but I got it done and finished. It's about you enter somewhere where you don't know where you're actually headed, so there is a certain amount of uncertainty, and you enter a door, and this is where I think architects also play the fool. So the door is designed like a guillotine. So it literally is cut in that shape so that when you open the door, you feel that it's going to chop your head off. But you don't tell the client such things. Those gory stories and fun you keep to yourself. So it's a bizarre plan, but that space is never feels like this. You think that you'll go crazy looking at it, or it's a play of forms or play of volumes? No, it's not. I think it's a so it's got a very simple strategy. It has 3 different gardens, and it is only looking at inflections as you move. So you move through the center, which is the core, which is, sorry, it's not very visible. That's the concrete, and there are skylights which happen. And that's what collects the water from the roof. The roof is not straight. Everything is sloping. Most difficult house to execute. But architects have been known to use the axe on their own foot. So this is one of the gardens which was used by her mother. So she would spend a lot of time here. That's on the left is the breakfast room. That's the pavilion kind of space. Nobody believes. I've had other people come into this space because the house actually is like this. There's nothing more and nothing less than what you see. That's the level of simplicity and the idea of luxury that they have. The luxury is about simplicity of material, it's about space, it's about shade, and how light transforms what happens on the wall, because this literally becomes, like Kuke was showing in his project, it gets animated. And I often get pictures from them because, and this is as frugal, maybe there is only going to be a flower vase which will come, otherwise there's nothing. Yeah, the most intensely detailed project that I've ever done. Everything, including bench, to the light, which got the El Decor award, and the skirting, to this, to, it's everything is, there's no end to this. But yeah, this house breathes, and the concrete does two things. In the daytime, it becomes shelter. In the nighttime, it really feels like a dense cave because it absorbs all the light that you're using. It doesn't pick light. And then you have these little log cabin kind of thing. So it's literally just about light, which that's the skylight on the left. These are the cutout skylights. Um, and little things, and I think these little things matter a lot. That was is for the granddaughter, because when she comes, she has a thing by the window, and the lady, she became a writer, so she sits here and does her writing. She writes English fiction, so she has a view to the entire garden. And that's her son's room, and that's the granddaughter's little space. Um, that's my cave actually. Um, I closed a bit of my home. This is below my office, so I closed this double height space and made a little plywood kind of thing. And I discovered my home only during COVID, because otherwise I was in the studio till 9 or 10 o'clock. Otherwise, once nobody was coming, I was not even going to the studio, which was one floor up. I would rather spend time here. Yeah, it is just a place for books, and that's all it is. Very. This is a house in the hills. I think one of our few houses. This actually belongs to the same lady who we did the house for, but this one, she asked me to design. She said, "Let me see what a man does and what a woman did," because the other house was done by Nisha. So yeah, so that was fun. So this was my take on this. This is Andrew Wyatt's painting, because there was this huge desire that she had of this hill house in the tea estates, um, and my little sketch which I made in the beginning. So it began with model, and very. So 2 blocks: living space, bedroom space, and a link, and a space in the heart of the house. So this is what it became, and this has. It's only when I reflect back, and this is something which I have also realized, that a lot of the decisions, they happen, but their real reason actually only I myself realize at a later point of time. Whether it be the plan is very much like what the villagers and even the British were doing in Coonoor. There's no difference. So typologically it is similar. Then what does it do about the structure? It has shades of South American modernism, which is the stilts and the concrete. There is the lime plaster, which is for purposes of weather and for having buildings age gracefully, so that you never paint. Let it age. And the roof, which is done by a French craftsman, it's all handmade. Why? Because it's very durable, and very precisely detailed, and you have the skylight. So I think it has so many shades of so many things that one is actually trying to find a balance. So you don't take a road in front of the house. The valley is on the right side. So what you do is the road sort of kind of loops around and goes into the house from the back, so that your view never sees a road. And that's where you arrive, and you can get onto a ramp and get into the living space, or you can go and park downstairs and then come up the spiral staircase. But the heart of the house is actually in the center, which is open towards the valley. On this side, that side is the valley, and that's the connection in glass, which is between the living and the bedroom spaces. I think yesterday some of us were talking about this idea of knowing when to stop. And I think this is something which I'm extremely conscious about, because our versatility in and proficiency um, needs to be tamed. We need to be able to know when to do more, when to do less, and when to stop. And I think this is a very subjective thing. So I enjoy that. The small things, whether it's uh, so it's about scale, it's about effort, it's a lot about. So that's just a hall, whether it's for an artist or whether it's for a writer or whether it's for just living, and you get this dramatic light, which because it's fairly cool in Kunur, and that's the little attic which I have reserved for myself. Which is above the kitchen, so you get beautiful light there, and you see them because you're the closest to the moon from here, from the attic. It's all that has a European influence. This is derived from the bisons which are surrounding the site. That's the tea estate, and yeah, all the details. And there's a suspended staircase that opens up so that you can, exchange things. That's a little bell. Very, very little things, and that's of course the glass top, and this is something. The picture on the left is one of my favorite because, okay, these pictures of this house, because there was very little time. This is one of the only projects which I've documented myself because I was short of time, so I had to do it before the rain. So these pictures I had taken, and the picture on the left. I call it, the object of desire, because when we have a view, I always assume that that building actually belongs to somebody else and is prettier than mine. And I think that conflict and that realization makes it very precious. So you think that that is my house, that is somebody else's house, but when you go there, this looks better, because then that is somebody else's house. So I think this play, actually it's fairly well studied in Marcel Duchamp's work, early work. He does this. And of course I have enjoyed doing lights, and so, which is with metal and wood and things like that. The idea of sustainability, I hate this word. But yeah, I've realized that we have worked with so many old buildings. I never ended up doing my master's. Didn't even try, actually, honestly. I thought I was good enough. It was enough to do, because I took 10 years in undergrad without failing, so which was a miracle in itself. So I thought, yeah, we'll learn down the line. So there's a 17th century house in Fort Kochi where we made just 3 rooms. It's in a heritage zone, so we did not transform the outside. So why I say it is sustainable, because the best thing that has happened is the most sustainable, and you hold on to it, and then you add to it, you save it, and you kind of capitalize on it, things like that. So this is the first floor, just 3 rooms. Each room has a veranda, a toilet in the open, and it's all surrounded by trees, although it's center of the city. This is again, and so in my view, architects, and sometimes it is very, very disappointing, and you feel sad that architects are so vulnerable to what kind of jobs you get. I have no control on what I get. And some good ones have slipped away, some were not so promising, but they turned out well. But yeah, all we tried was to do 99%, do a good job. So this was an existing building which is owned by my old friend, and we added a floor and we changed the inside, the core. So we removed what is yellow and we added what is red in steel. So there were 2 identical buildings, and this one is more or less still in the same shape, and this was transformed and that floor was added. So you can see the old structure was this. This was one floor, and this was the other floor. So it's like a surgery happening inside the building. And yeah, then you take out the organs literally, and you open up and you take the light down straight, and you add this, and the light goes right down in the center of the building. and you remove all the walls and all the windows. And this is a design studio. They design fabrics. So to have minimum distortion of light, of color, that's why it's all gray. Then the second building was to be done, and we removed all this. And my friend and client were standing together, and he said, "I think we will stop." And I also said, "Yeah, I think we should stop. We should not do anything. We had removed this much." So we realized, I think there is a point where you realize you don't do something. So that project was shelved. It was only the demolition which happened, and this is how it is. It is used for some photographs, not for himself, but for his, that's Phantom Hand's furniture. Um, um, so it is just used like that. We found an old school which was used as a school but started as an orphanage after the 1890s famine in the Mysore state. This was the condition of the building, and this was how we documented it. Everything learned at an, I'm not a conservation expert, but yes, I think just good common sense. This particular project I did single-handedly, 140 site visits over 7 months. You can calculate the average number of visits per week alone. And most of the things were done by hand. These drawings were made afterwards, especially these two, where you add certain supports and you reinforce certain places which is falling. You do cappings, which is green, and red ones are the, that was the kind of condition of the place. The drawings were these. These are GFC. And it's executed. And this is what it has become. We try to be as discreet as possible, keep the original character, literally. And this is something which I have learned about. Certain buildings need to speak out, and certain buildings need to be, need to literally make people feel that the architect was never there. So we just did a little skirting. We relayed the whole floor with the same stone. This is all relayed, same stone as before. Changed some beams and things like that, rectified cracks, made some transitions. Yeah, so this is the transformation. So it gets a new lease of life. Certain institutions, 2002, we did a little church. The unique thing was it has a very traditional plan, simple amphitheater kind of plan, central focus. This is a Baptist church, so it was it didn't have any symbols. There was no cross, nothing else. So it's, for them, it is not a religious space. It is actually a congregation space for fellowship, where you get the sense of that you feel good about praying there, but it is not a religious space. So the only thing which appears is actually some text from the Bible, which appears here because it was all uncertain as to what will happen around the building. It actually closes itself off, but it does one important move, which is it makes a slice in the roof. So what happens is that the light comes straight in by the time they finish the service, and that's what happens, and it gets a focus on this. So although light has played a pretty important role in our work, and this is a story of one of my important and clients who discovered me in maybe 98 or 99, and one day I got a call and he said, "I want to meet," and then I met, and he said a strange thing. He showed me the site and said, "I'm not going to tell you what you have to do. You have to tell me what you want to do with this site." There was one jackfruit tree in front, and but then he said the scary thing. His first architect was Jeffrey Bawa. The second one was Rahul Mehrotra. So, and I was young. So I was, I was anxious. So I worked with, we just worked with idea of 3 buildings which are close to each other, which just works with 2 slices of light. That's all it does. It's a very, very simple building, but one of the most richest experiences even today. So that's the slice of light. it's only 1.2 meters wide, takes the light right down to the basement from here. And you literally don't need any light during the day, and they normally work till 5:36. So central areas are just transparent, and there is only you know, a 1.5 floor height and a single floor height. That's about it. There's constant views from everywhere. And we added a floor, which is this, where the roof actually became like a tent. So it's like putting a room on the roof, which feels very, very light and gives the impression of being almost fabric-like. Yeah, that's of course our studio, and yeah, that's the studio on top. That's 2004. Now there are a lot of buildings around. These are older pictures. Again, the light comes in, it goes down to the ground floor, so it travels 4 floors down. That's what you saw earlier. That was my impression of my room in COVID times, because that was what life was. There was a water bottle, there was a light, and we've done a couple of public projects. This was a competition, the Freedom Park, about 22 acres of old jail. So we were looking at an overlay of how does one overlay a present path over older typology and an older memory. So that's what we were trying to work with. And so it is about certain clearing up of certain areas, additions, and various things. So what was the guarded portion around the tower becomes actually the public space. And you change the movement. So you keep discovering the old pattern and elements in parts, and you're reminded of it, and yet it becomes a public space which they start enjoying. There are a lot of it's allowed to have public meetings there. This was one of our important competition projects. We've done lots of competitions. I'm not showing most of them today because it's too short. This we came second, and we knew that this project can never win because the strategy was based on cleaning of a brownfield, because it was contaminated earth after. So the strategy of cleaning becomes the landscape strategy, and it also becomes the strategy for healing, and that becomes the language of the project. And it's about water, it's about movement within the spaces. So it's a kind of a very, very poetic take on this. And we knew that we'll never win, and we went all out. But it was wonderful. Actually, the day we were sending it off, I think the next morning, Doshi came to the studio, and he started talking about the project, and we said, God, now we have to start again. It was the last day. We had to submit the next morning. So this was, I think I was telling about the Porto project. This was 3.5 kilometers of stretch along the Douro River, and there were 9 building sites, but we enjoyed it. I think we had a wonderful team from Pune actually, who were interns. 2 months we worked, the whole office, 24/7. I think we learned hell of a lot. Everybody, we enjoyed ourselves. We came fourth, but that's okay. But we really enjoyed it. This project is yet to be opened. It's 8 years since we finished the building. It's an underground building. It's a Martyrs Memorial. It's yet to be open to public. So, yeah, that's the memorial. So it is again based on the idea of a ritual route, like what you have. It's very common, especially in South India, especially in Kerala, that you will find the ritual route is not only a part of Hindu practice, but also in old churches. It's very similar. They also go around the church and things like that. So you go in, and then you go 6 meters below the ground, and the trees are. So this plan is informed by the roots of the trees. So there's a straight line. That's the hall. That's a kind of a. So you are actually slipping down into the ground by 6 meters. Here you're moving between the 2 trees, and you come in and you look. It's absolutely gorgeous when you look at the tree from 6 meters below. And this is of course older pictures, but it's all covered by green now. That's the underground courtyards. and that's the names which take precedence on the top, and that's the hall, and that's the local tradition of putting, kind of venerating a stone for um, in remembrance of people who have laid down their lives for the kingdom. So this is like one piece for all people in India from the armed forces, all three armed forces, um, since 1947. That's the hall. Um, and yeah, it's still unoccupied and not used. Um, this interesting challenge was to make this 450-ton single piece of stone, and the shifting of it. We have wonderful documentation of this, which you will see one day. I think this is where we are discussing about certain things. And this is when the stone is being pulled out by 4 trucks in tandem, and it has to go out of the quarry before the monsoon starts, otherwise the trucks will slip. So that's when it is being taken out. 240 wheels on this truck, and they're moving here, and that's the giant frames which were holding up the stone, and that's the cables which were holding it up. That's the truck, and that's the truck in movement. You can count the 4 trucks and the carriage, and the kind of intrigue that it caused. So it was coming from beyond the airport, near the hills, to the city, and then it starts moving through the city. It cannot be taken through flyovers because they'll collapse. So they have to find a special route, so they traveled 40 kilometers in 2 months. And that's how they lift. They push and they lift, and then they drop it into a socket. And that's the process of lifting, 200 mm at a time. And that's what it looks like today. And that's the bandstand. And that I reflect back on this almost looks like me to the plinth of a temple. That's so that it never takes precedence. That's the place, and yeah, it's yet to be opened. We did, Bangalore has 60% skilled migrants, extremely young population. So when they are single, they drink. When they're dating, they drink. When they have broken up, they drink. Otherwise, they drink. No, jokes apart, but that's because it's a very large part. Hospitality is a very large part of the economy. But I have found that they're very extremely responsible, and this is not a joke, because I think young people, nobody is going anywhere to get drunk. Seriously. They are very sane, and so this was the largest in 2018. It was the largest microbrewery in Asia. Now there are 2 bigger than this. So this was designed as a ruinscape. So it has a central space and just a slim building all around, and a hall which is for events. I won't get into the detailed story of this, but this idea of ruinscape and making it easy for everybody to get absorbed in this. This is how it looks today. I think the later pictures are a little more current. They might be last month or something. The green is consuming the building, and I think it's like a little oasis. It's 1,500 seater covers. It's 65,000 square feet, and this is where people eat, and otherwise they remove everything. There are events. They have their own beer, and on the FIFA World Night, there were 4,500 people inside. I was there in 2018, 2 months after they opened. And you can't believe the kind of numbers that it does. Yeah, this is how it was. This is that night. And that's the screen. So it happens on and off. IPL will be the same. So amazing spirit. It becomes like a mini stadium, you know. So this is one of our smallest projects. It's a single classroom. And I love to do it because I thought there was a huge scope. So we only added 1 classroom, and that's the end of the story. All we added was 1 classroom between trees and the plinth. Nothing else. Very, very ordinary structure in metal, but that's what it has become. It has become a space where they spend time, and it's between the trees. They have a play area. Now the trees have grown here. sorry, the resolution of the picture, something has gone wrong. So these are plinths where they sit and they play. Um, and it has really transformed this school completely. It's in the center of town, it's for the underprivileged. So they use it for assembly, they use it for parent-teacher meetings, they use it for playing, they use it for learning, and this is so transparent, they can actually open this up. Um, and like this is the morning assembly, this is when they are dining, this is when they will have a playtime. So that's a very satisfying project. This was finished in 2023, which is the Museum of Art and Photography, which yeah, so this was done with public funding, also let's say private funding. The structure is, sorry, concrete below and steel above. From ground floor onwards it becomes steel. And that's the public spaces which kind of are, it's an extremely dense building because it's, in my opinion, it's less than 50,000 square feet, which I would say is like a postage stamp size of a museum by world standards. Normally they are running into 10 lakh square feet onwards. But it's center of city, but I think it is making a huge difference because they are curating wonderful shows and they are constantly changing. So it's beginning to become a destination for people. This is during the process of making, where you're trying to use everything, where you turn the car, you make your tanks, what is left over of the setback, you again make the tanks. It has a stainless steel cladding. Again, I come back to the idea of ordinariness. While it has to attract attention from the outside as an object, to this as a part of the city, now it's always something to think about whether a building should be an icon or should it just merge with the city. And this is where, here I was dealing with two conditions. One is that it should be easily recognizable that this is a museum of a certain kind or what it is. So our metaphor was the idea of something that is like a water tank, the old British water tanks which had a skin like this. It was a container, that it was about something which is precious inside, which is pushing outwards. I was trying to use that as a metaphor for art itself, which is trying to make a difference. And this, of course, is stainless steel. But the details, the only thing that is modified a little bit is the little curve, and all the bolts are still seen in the building. That bird is not Photoshop, it is actually real. It so happened. Yeah, so that's the view from across. I think this is last year's pictures. And because the building is so tight on space and heights that you don't take the feed main ducts inside, but you put them outside. So it was not about trying to look like the Pompidou Center, but it was literally not possible. There was no space inside. Yeah, that's the sculpture courtyard on the side. There's a sunken courtyard where there's a cafe. That's the side sculpture courtyard. That's when Stephen Cox had come to do his Mahabalipuram series in granite, which he showed. This is from the opening day. Yeah, that's the courtyard below. Now, of course, it's all green and all that, and handmade benches and yeah. So the curation is done by a special. They get people from outside and sometimes from their own team. This is from the permanent collection of more than 60,000 pieces that they have. No false ceiling for ease of maintenance and flexibility. So there are points everywhere. You can move the lights because shows last from maximum of 2 years to about 8 to 9 months in a different space and 3 to 4 months in another space. So the idea being that you should be wanting to visit it and get to see something different. And this is one of the most inventive in terms of interactive technologies. So if you do happen to go to Bangalore, do see how those technologies work, because I think they're very interesting and engaging. That's, of course, the reception area with Arik Levy's sculpture, and that's the library. And yeah, you see this has gotten painted and just is kept like that. So not be worried and Actually, sometimes I think it's of great value that you just let it be the way it is made and do not try to embellish it further or leave it and drop it. Um, that's again, of course, the idea of graffiti and the art. Yeah, that's the entrance space. Yeah, I think that's pretty much, those are some steel models we had done. Um, yes, so I will end by just talking about, when I said that the topic was about architecture between the times. So what I really wanted to show through these is that what we do in the present is, I see it as a practice in the threshold, which is aware of a past, is trying to interpret the present, but it's also trying to aspire for a future. But what it is doing is trying to assimilate all that and balance it. And this is where what gets highlighted, what gets underplayed, how it is done. Um, so assuming that one has the ability, or one goes through the process of understanding how to do it. But I think the first awareness for any architectural work would be the awareness of where is it seeing itself to be. And this will sometimes require to pump up your ego and make a statement. It will also sometimes ask you to underplay everything. And it has to communicate. I think that's the bottom line of, especially for public spaces and even individual spaces for that matter. Because if they don't, they will never connect. And I think that is where I strive at the moment to be. Thank you.